Something strange is going on between Dak Prescott and Mike McCarthy, and Dak said some things. Mike McCarthy responded in a way that I did not expect him to. So let's break it down and much more on this episode of Cowboys Digest. Welcome in, everybody, to Cowboys Digest. I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, and we're going to be breaking down some of the comments that were made by Dak Prescott and the rebuttal that was offered by head coach Mike McCarthy. But before we get into all of this madness, I want to thank you all for the support that we received on our previous video. So if you haven't checked that out, go ahead and do so, because the Cowboys made a signing and seems pretty exciting. I'm excited to see what this guy can do if given the opportunity to actually play with the defense. But before we get into the video, I want to let you know that a large percentage of you who are watching are not subscribed to the channel. So go ahead and hit that sub button. It'd mean the world to me, and we're very close to my goal of 3,000 subscribers. So thank you guys so much. Let's not stop it right there. Let's keep it going. So I wanted to get into this. Dak Prescott feels helpless that he can't help Mike McCarthy fight for a Cowboys extension. He definitely deserves a chance, Dak told me today. Another contract and a chance to coach this team amongst more influence on his terms. So that's a pretty big bombshell right there from Dak Prescott, saying that he wants Mike McCarthy to be able to coach this team the way that he thinks Mike McCarthy can coach it. And Mike McCarthy responded with this. Cowboys coach Mike McCarthy said he has had most input he has ever had as a head coach in Dallas compared to Green Bay. He is not sure what Dak Prescott meant by him needing more influence on his terms. Now, if this is the final product, if this is Mike McCarthy having his fingertips all over this roster, I'm not so sure I want him back. And I don't want him back. I think he's a good football coach, not a great football coach. And I also believe that he has overstayed his welcome in Dallas. Now, we can all agree that the problem lies at the top with Jerry Jones, the one making the roster decisions and the one that is tasked with putting a competitive football team on the field every Sunday. So I don't know if it's fully Mike McCarthy that can be blamed here, and I think it would be unfair to pin all the blame on McCarthy himself. But the fact that Dak thinks that he doesn't have the full influence, or that he doesn't have the full impact that he can have on this roster, speaks volumes. And then for Mike McCarthy to come out and say this, that this is the most influence he's ever had on a team, comparing his time to Green Bay, it's pretty ridiculous. I mean, he is calling plays. He is the head coach at the same time, and I'm sure Mike McCarthy relies on his coordinators like every good head coach does, but this seems like a Mike McCarthy job. This seems like his fingerprints are all over this baby, and Dak Prescott doesn't seem to think so. Maybe this is McCarthy trying to save his ass in terms of his relationship with Jerry Jones, and he doesn't want to ruffle the feathers of the guy who is signing his paychecks, at least for the time being. And the fact that he's not going to ruffle his feathers maybe ups his chances of getting an extension. So he's sort of taken blame for what's going on around here, and I feel bad for McCarthy in a sense, because he hasn't really, I don't think he's been given the best hand. He wasn't dealt the best hand this season by Jerry Jones, especially with the departure of Tony Pollard going to Tennessee. You have a couple of rookies on your offensive line who have struggled at times but are starting to come into their own. Like, this is a young, inexperienced football team that has dealt with a lot of injuries. So Dak Prescott wants Mike McCarthy back as the head coach next year. Buckle up. When your franchise QB openly says this, Jerry is going to have a serious conversation about it. Let's see how they finish. Now, I think if the Cowboys finish well and maybe get themselves back into the playoff picture, then Mike McCarthy has earned himself another opportunity. But then we'd just be doing the same thing over and over again. It's like hitting your head against the wall and expecting a different result. McCarthy has had his opportunities. He has had his chances to bring this roster to the promised land, and he's failed to do so. 3 12-win seasons in a row. He's been one of the most successful Cowboys head coaches in regular season history, in recent memory, that is. But it hasn't translated to any playoff success. It's been the same story over and over again, just failures over and over again. So for that reason alone, I think it's time to move in a different direction. And I don't think Mike McCarthy is the only issue with the Dallas Cowboys. I think the biggest issue is something that will never go away, and that's Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones, who are calling the shots at the top. But you got to give yourself a different look. You got to see if something else could work out in your favor here. And I'm talking about hiring a new head coach, just going in a different direction, getting a different voice in that locker room. The boys clearly haven't given up on Mike McCarthy. I'm not headed in that direction, and I'm not using that as a take here. I think the boys really respect McCarthy, and they have been battling their asses off in the past couple of weeks here, and maybe that's to save his job. So maybe that's to save some of their own jobs as players with roster spots next year. I don't know what's been going on, but we've seen a little bit of a turnaround here in the past couple of weeks. I don't know if Mike McCarthy is the one to give praise for that, but still, I think the Cowboys are in order for a reset at the head coaching position. And what is Dak Prescott supposed to say ultimately? It's not that shocking, says Clarence Hill Jr. Dak liked Wade Wilson. Dak liked Scott Linehan. Dak liked Jason Garrett. Dak liked Kellen Moore. And of course, Dak supports Mike McCarthy. So they have a great relationship between the two of them. That's been well documented over the years that they have been together. And I personally like Mike McCarthy. I think he can get a lot more creative. And maybe the only scenario that I envision him being back is if there is an offensive coordinator. If they get some offensive genius to call the plays and let Mike McCarthy handle the head coaching duties and handle the player personnel and just the overall relationships within that locker room, because he seems like a great people person, but great people don't they don't win you football games most of the time. And you can have a guy like Dan Campbell who does a little bit of everything, who is a master motivator, who gets the most out of each and every individual that is on his team. But I don't think Mike McCarthy is that fiery, get me fired up for a game kind of guy. I just don't see that persona in him. He's definitely got a little bit of fire under him. There's no doubt. He's not some dead silent head coach that just sits on the sideline, but he's not Dan Campbell. And there are different coaching styles for everybody. But for me personally, certainly makes a lot of sense to clean house, move on, and let's look towards the future. And this was on Sirius XM Sports, channel 159, and I tend to agree with them. I don't think Mike McCarthy is the only issue, but I think he is part of the problem. It's gotten a little bit stale. The offense does not look creative whatsoever. They've been a bit better in the past couple of weeks, but especially with Cooper Rush, you got to try some different things, and you got to try to get the most out of all of your skilled position players, and the Cowboys just haven't been doing that. So let me know in the comments down below, do you guys think it is time for a reset for the Dallas Cowboys? Should they get rid of Coach Mike McCarthy at the end of the season? And who do you want them to target? For me personally, I think Ben Johnson would be amazing. I think Mike Vrabel would be amazing. There is a pretty long list that I can give to you guys that I would like to see manning that position going into next season as opposed to Mike McCarthy. But give me your thoughts down below, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Go Cowboys.